Hi everyone, it's Gina K from Gina K Designs, and I'm excited to be here on the Simon Says Stamp blog and YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you several inking techniques. The stamp set that I'm using is the Autumn Wreath Builder stamp set. Of course, you can make beautiful autumn wreaths using this set, but you can also use the small elements included to create beautiful backgrounds and to do fun inking techniques. The first technique I want to show you is kind of like the rock and roll technique. I'm using some prickly pear and honey mustard ink cubes and a charcoal brown ink cube. I'm going to start with the maple leaf, and I have this sitting on one of the Gina K Designs comfort blocks. These are really nice, comfortable blocks to hold. So I'm going to open up both of these ink cubes, and I'm leaving the lids right on top of where I have the ink cubes placed so I remember which color is which. Then I'm going to start by inking up the maple leaf stamp with the lighter color, which is prickly pear. Then I'm going to just touch the edge of this stamp to the ink pad, just one edge, and then I'm going to stamp that up here at the top. Now this kind of creates the look where the leaf is starting to turn brown on just the one side it's working its way in. And I always like to clean my stamp in between each impression with the tidy towel. This way I won't transfer color. Now each time I touch that second ink color, I'm touching it to the stamp in a different position. This way all the leaves won't look exactly the same. So for this one, I touched it more at the top. For the other two, I touched it more on the sides. And you can see as I stamp each one, I'm picking a little spot to add that darker color, and I'm turning my stamp each time I make an impression on the cardstock. That really makes the leaves look like they're just falling off the tree in all different directions. So I kind of have almost a triangular pattern here, but I wanted to leave room for my greeting. So for my greeting, I'm going to use the charcoal brown ink, and it's a great ink if you don't want to use black, but you still want something really dark. This really works well with ivory cardstock and warm-toned inks. So I'm using the Thankful, Grateful, Blessed greeting from the Autumn Wreath Builder stamp set. And then I'm going to mount this cardstock onto a charcoal brown panel and then onto a white note card. Now I'm going to add some sequins, and sequins are such a fun way to add interest to your card. So these sequins are by Nuvo, by Tonic, and I'm going to just pour some out. These are kind of small, and I like the small ones. I'm going to be using some Connect glue and the Marvy jewel picker to pick up the sequins and put them into position. Connect glue is great for adding embellishments onto your card. It goes on white, but it dries completely clear, so if any glue comes through the little hole, it's just going to disappear once it's dry. So I'm going to start by adding a little dot of Connect glue, and then I'm going to pick up a sequin with the jewel picker and place it onto the glue. It's that easy. So I'm going to continue to add sequins kind of in and around the different leaves. So the sequins are kind of falling in the same pattern that the leaves are falling. And it just creates lots of glittery interest on this card. It's a very clean and simple card, but that embellishment really makes it just a little bit special. So there, I've added those sequins, and you can see how nice they sparkle and shine, and it's the perfect addition to that card. Now here's another card that I made, but instead of using honey mustard, I used tomato soup with the prickly pear, and you can see it gives a different look. You can also alternate leaves and do both color combinations on one card. For my second card, I'm going to do a technique called Thumping. Now it's an old technique, but I forget about the old ones once in a while because there's so many new fun things to do, but these are really fun techniques. So the marker I'm using is a Tombow marker, number 443. You can use any water-based marker for this. So I'm going to start by inking up my stamp with some jelly bean green. And once I've inked it up real well, I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to thump the tip of the marker, or tap the tip of the marker all over the the surface of that stamp. This gives a very different look than the rock and roll because the color is dispersed throughout the design. Now, whenever you're doing any of these inking techniques that I'm showing today, you definitely want to make sure you're using a solid image stamp. And if you're newer to stamping and you're not sure what that means, a solid image stamp is one that you would ink up in solid color versus the kind of stamp that's a line art image that you would use coloring tools like pencils and markers to color in. So these are all little solid stamps that I'm using today. And you see just finishing up here, adding a little bit coming in from the sides so it looks like a piece of patterned paper and all the images aren't just in the center of the piece of cardstock. Now I'm going to add some flowers all over the surface of this card and all the empty spaces. And the color that I'm using is Blue Lagoon, and that matches beautifully with that Tombow marker. So all of the blue that's scattered about in the leaves now matches the flowers. And once that's done, I've mounted that onto a piece of charcoal brown cardstock, and then I've layered that on top of some white and charcoal brown, and then onto a white note card. Now, if you turn this card horizontally, you could use a long greeting across that open bottom. But if you want to do a sideways one like I'm doing, you can use a die cut. And I am using the Thermoweb double stitch circle die, and I cut that out, and I'm going to stamp my Thanksgiving greeting right on the top of that circle. So remember, you can use all kinds of non-traditional colors to make more traditional types of cards. Now I'm going to add a blue flower, and then I'm going to add a leaf, and I'm going to do the thumping technique again on the leaf so it coordinates with the other leaves in the background. So I'm just accenting that greeting panel. So I'm going to thump again using that marker just by tapping over the surface, and then I'm going to stamp it. You can also take this technique up a notch by spritzing it with water, and it gives it even more of a watercolory look. I'm just filling in a little bit of the empty spaces there from that flower with a darker blue from that marker, and that just makes the flower look a little more interesting. Now I've layered that circle onto one of the single stitched circles by Thermoweb, and I taped it right onto my card. So for this one, I'm going to add some of these Nuvo sequins, and these are an iridescent sequin. They're just beautiful, and they pick up all of the colors that are in your card project. And again, I'm going to use some of the Connect glue and that Marvy jewel picker, and I'm putting little dots of glue, putting the sequin on, and then just helping it off with the tip of my finger. I really love the way these sequins look. I love the color of them because they're so translucent, and you don't even really notice them at first, but when you turn the card a little bit, they really shimmer in the light, and they pick up all the colors that are in your card project. So you can see I went a little crazy with sequins on this one. I love having lots of glitter on these cards. And then you can see how pretty this looks. I'll just turn it a little bit in the light, and you can see how lovely all that shimmer is. That's a great sequin too for Christmas cards. Just has a snowy feel to it. For my final card, I'm going to do a swiping technique. So I have another leaf, and I'm going to use some faded brick ink, and I'm going to just swipe the very edge of the ink pad down the stamp. This creates almost a wood-grained look. So your stamps are going to look like they've got grains of wood going across them. And once again, I'm turning the stamp each time I stamp it to make it look like the leaves are very random and just kind of falling out of the branch of the tree. So I'm going to continue to do the faded brick using this leaf. This is like an oak leaf. And then I'm going to add a second leaf design in here in a different color. I think it really pulls it all together with this technique when you add that second color. So I'm going to do some warm cocoa for this one, and I'm going to add that into some of the empty spaces. So here we have several different kinds of leaves falling down the front of this card. And you can really see all of that cool wood-grained detail in that darker color. So just finding different spots, but I definitely want to make sure I have enough room for my greeting, so I don't want to go too far over to the right. Once I've filled in all of those leaves, then I'm going to use my greeting. So for my greeting, I'm going to use the charcoal brown ink instead of the warm cocoa. I want that greeting to be a little bit darker, and I want it to coordinate with the little panel of cardstock that I tuck behind this panel. So I'm using this "Thanks so very much" greeting that comes out of the Autumn Wreath Builder stamp set. And once again, I'm adding some of these sequins. If you don't have sequins, you can always use things like the Nuvo crystal drops, you can use enamel dots, you can use tiny buttons, or any other type of rhinestone or pearl embellishment you might have in your collection. This layout is a great way to use some of those embellishments that might be collecting a little bit of dust in your drawer. Another thing I like about these cards is that leaves are always the perfect element for masculine cards. So if you struggle with ideas for masculine cards, these layouts will work perfect. Just change up the greeting and you're ready to go. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll give some of these fun inking techniques a try. Stay tuned to Simon Says Stamp for more fun videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.